Okay, welcome to this A-level Buddhism anthology analysis of Rahula's Bodhisattva ideal in Buddhism, and this is section 14. Let's read it before we analyze it. This is also called the Vimukhi-kaya, liberation body. There is no difference between the three. That means there are no different three nirvanas or vimuktis for three persons. Nirvana or vimukti is the same for all, but only a Buddha achieves the complete liberation from all the obstructions to the knowable, i.e. the obstructions to knowledge, Jatya, Varna, Vishadigi, not the Stravakas and the Prakya Buddhas. This is called Dharmakaya, Dharma body. And it is in this and many other innumerable qualities, capacities, and abilities that the Buddha becomes incomparable and superior to Stravakas and Pratya Buddhas. The Mahayana view is quite in keeping with the Theravada Pali Tripitaka. In the Samyutta Nikaya, the Buddha says that the Tathagata, the Buddha, and the Bhikkhu, the Stravaka disciple, liberated through wisdom, are equal with regard to their vimukti, liberation. But the Tathagata is different and distinguished from the liberated bhikkhus, in that he, Tathagata, discovers and shows the path, Magga, that was not known before. Let's do this. What is Sangha's idea of the Vimukti-kaya, liberation body, and is Rahula accurately describing it, reading it? So he says, this is also called the Vimukti-kaya, liberation body. So yes, this is an idea in a Sangha's thinking that there are three kayas, bodies of liberation, probably that relate to there's a lot of threes, aren't there? This liberation body idea in Rahula's, however, re-paraphrasing of a Sangha, at best does not seem to do it justice. Or more likely, it's a deliberate reinterpretation of its essence while trying to keep its identity for polemical purposes. He's changing the meaning of the idea. Three kinds of liberation bodies that relate to, well, is it the Trikaya doctrine, the three bodies? Is it the three, perhaps even better, ideas of liberation to do with the Bodhisattva yana ultimately, and the Prakya Buddha yana and the Arahat yana? So the liberation body idea in Rahula's paraphrasing doesn't do us justice. Basham would argue that a Sangha, in his original idea, and the maturing Mahayana thinking that a Sangha represents, in their thinking, the goal of Mahayana Buddhism, of liberation, was embroiled in the development of this three-body doctrine. The liberation body is, in fact, three nested bodies, like a Russian doll. While there is in an idea in Yogacara that there's a final, perhaps truth body, liberation, that is a Dharmakaya in practice, either this was seen as such a distant goal as to not really be possible, or with Yogacara, such thinking in the end would be dualistic. And the Dharmakaya perhaps is just already present as an embryo, now in a nested reality sense, even if we don't perceive it, but it's there. Now, Rahula will have little or nothing to do with this three-body doctrine. He will think as part of this fascinating mythological thing that's going on in Mahayana. So is Rahula right when he claims there is no difference between the three? go. Rahula is making an argument that the idea that the purification of the defilements of the mind, whatever they are, and people disagree, that is achieved by the Buddha, and he has a claim about originality that he has access to, a Prakya Buddha and a Stravaka, notice he hasn't said a Bodhisattva, is just the same in essence, if different identity statements. So the identity statements are different, but now notice he's changing the identity statements as well as the essence of those identity statements. So this Basham and Mahayana would profoundly disagree on is the case. Asanga's point is that the only true or perfected liberation is the Bodhisattva liberation that is getting eclipsed here in Rahula's argumentation, his polemics. What is Asanga's idea of the Vimukti Kana? And sorry, here we go. Is Rahula right when he claims there are no three different nirvanas for three different persons? There are no three different nirvanas or vimuktis for three different persons. Well, no, this is only true if we accept his assumption that Mahayana are, whether they realize it or not, in his inclusivist language, are aimed essentially only at the final goal of Nibbana. In essence, even if they don't understand that, they have a different identity statement, but the essence of what they're doing is aiming at Theravada awakenment and then final Nibbana without remainder or pari-Nibbana. And this is just to ignore the essential claims of Mahayana, or better to reject and deliberately reinterpret them in this disingenuous kind of way he's doing. So is Rahula right when he claims there's only one way of salvation that's the same for all? Again, no, he's making spurious links. He's talking about a partial truth and ignoring what he disagrees with. Yes, theoretically, there's only one final goal, Nibbana, for the Mahayana, and there are not quite three final goals or Dharma for Mahayana. But the final goal is used in a apophatic sense. It's accepted as increasingly so far distant as to be only a symbolic thing, as it were. Really, the emphasis is not on it getting to Nibbana, as it might have been in the earlier stages of Mahayana, but not in the later stages. And the perfections you develop, the 6 perfections, the 10 perfections, the Lotus Sutra and later Tathagata Garbha Sutra, 10 perfections, as an earthly or even a heavenly bodhisattva, are untically rich actual goals, even if they are not the kind of identity statements of Mahayana. So you have to differentiate the identity and the essence. And it's not the same for all. It increasingly is very different. So 6, what is the complete? So only a Buddha, not Bodhisattva, we switch that word out, achieves the complete liberation. Now he's starting to press the accelerator down on his polemics, driving us towards Theravada. But only a Buddha achieves complete liberation. Again, Sangha would say no. Mahayana would say no. This is repeatedly, in the sense of if I said enough times, you're going to believe it. It's going to become true. Assuming that Mahayana are only liberated, are only aiming at a final goal of Nibbana, is the essence of their goal of awakenment, then final parinibbana without remainder or pari. And this is just again ignoring the essential truths of Mahayana. What are the obstructions to all the obstructions to the knowable? And sorry, just before we go on, looking at this last question, what is the complete liberation? Well, Rahula does perhaps acknowledge a maturing Mahayana, developing complex doctrinal ideas such as Trakiya, Buddha nature, interconnectedness, sunyata, the analysis of consciousness, of Asanga, which led to a further evolution of the Bodhisattva vow we see in Shantideva, and the development of rich and challenging practices. However, all of this he's just lumping together and saying, no, you're all really Theravada. You don't realize it. What Mahayana might think of as successful practice and outcomes, what Theravada think of, are entirely different in essence. So what are the obstructions to what is knowable? What are called the Jet Varna Vishadigi. So in the Buddhist tradition, what obstructs our knowledge are the 5 hindrances. Here we have it in Sanskrit and Pali. And these are identified as mental factors that hinder our progress in meditation in our daily lives. And there are different lists, and this reflects different beliefs, perhaps intentionally so, probably intentionally so. In the Theravada tradition, these factors are identified specifically as obstacles to the jhanas. Remember the 4 jhanas, the 4 stages of concentration that happen within meditative practice. Within Mahayana, the 5 hindrances are identified as obstacles to samatha, tranquility meditation. Perhaps to discover your Buddha nature, perhaps to develop compassion for others. Contemporary insight meditation teachers identify 5 hindrances as obstacles to mindfulness meditation. The obstacles were also thought of entirely differently in early developing Mahayana, especially Yogacara, than that of Proto-Theravada Stravaka. In the former, it's our dualistic thinking, believing that there is a difference between the physical and the mental, between object and subject. That's Yogacaра's idealism. It's almost its own kind of yana, its own end. You have to get to a point where we recognize mind only. Not all Buddhists go that far, it has to be understood. But their radical idea, the cause of our suffering, is our dualistic thinking, and our discovery of not quite our Buddha nature, but our luminous mind is the solution, that the mind is the cause of all reality. Not all Buddhists will go this far. The defilements that prevent attaining the jhanas in Theravada begin with the 3 poisons: greed, hatred, and ignorance. Remember our stuff by Guruttana Henepola, the modern thinker on Vipassana meditation. In his book, The Jhanas in Theravada Buddhist Meditation, explains that in the first jhana there is the complete disappearance of these 5 hindrances. Now, Kionis of the saying this, he says the Madhyamaka, for example, famously conclude that the one who perceives emptiness, sunyata, as the true nature of phenomena will see nirvana and samsara as coterminous. The Yogacara school teaches that the cessation of dualistic mental discrimination will lead to the realization the opposition between nirvana and samsara is merely conceptual. So the defilements are different. The obstructions in Madhyamaka, it's our lack of perception of emptiness, of interconnectedness. In Yogacara, it's our dualistic, it's our dualistic mental, our lack of discrimination between, the way we polarize object and subject, we have to get over that. So what are, we'll move on from talking about Stravakas, the Prakya Buddhas, the Dharmakaya, the Dharma body, to the innumerable qualities, capacities, abilities. What are these innumerable qualities, capacities, and abilities? Now, again, when we hear this sort of apophatic language, innumerable, this sounds like the early self-soothing hyperbole of one of the Buddhist sutras, that there are Pali Canon lists of qualities and capacities that begin with the Buddha. We've talked about the 32 marks, or the major and 80 minor qualities of the Buddha that are then promised following the engagement with the practice of the 4 jhanas and the practice of the 4 immeasurables jhanas. Really, these lists and lists of lists in the Pali Canon, even before we get to the perfection of wisdom literature, the 10 purnas, the 4 viharas, we find in proto or maturing Mahayana thinking, top of the list would be compassion and wisdom. Obviously, the 10, 11, or even 13 described as the twin wings of a bird. But in addition would be upaya, skillful means, and resolution vow. Now, these would not be accepted by Theravada. So what are just the innumerable qualities and capacities and abilities of the Dharmakaya body? Well, the Stravakas and Prakya Buddhas, Theravada would say, are not him, as would Mahayana. But Rahula's not going to mention these. That's important. Rahula makes no comment. Surely he could not see them all, upaya, resolution vow, as just equal and attained as much as Theravada as by Mahayana. Theravada don't seek to attain those things as Mahayana do. And so he's in lumping them all together, as he seems to do here, and he's ignoring the detail, the significance. Clarity is the mother of contrast, but muddying the waters is the mother of coercive, non-persuasive argumentation that you have to be critical of. So what should we again be critical of when we notice he says the Buddhas, the Stravakas, and the Prakya Buddhas? Just go back to this. The Stravakas, but not only the Buddha. So here it is again up here. So again, he hasn't said the Bodhisattva achieves complete liberation up here, but the Buddha. And again, this is the same strategy. If I say it often enough, I'm going to brainwash you into believing it. And he might well achieve that, and it's very powerful. It's a polemical switching out of identity statement of the Bodhisattva as he continues his polemic rhetoric tactic of non-persuasive, coercive speech. And it's just not justified by argumentation. 10. Why does Rahula say the Buddha becomes incomparable? Here it is. The Buddha becomes incomparable. Well, given a Buddha, and we're not using the word Bodhisattva now, is being defined as an enlightened being who teaches others. Mahayana would have something to say about that. We're comparing apples and oranges. The claim that the teacher who is enlightened is incomparable sounds much like a reference to a Theravada monk, a Thera, in other words, an elder that we should listen to. This seems to be Rahula's aha moment. Aha. But again, it's just confusing categories, essence and identity. A Bodhisattva can teach and probably should teach others, but they don't need to renounce their householder life and spend their lives pursuing long, arduous meditation full time, nor do they need to seek to escape samsara. They commit to being reborn into it to help others. So is Rahula right when he says it's quite in keeping with the Theravada Pali Tripitaka? Well, now we've crested the summit of his argument or lack of argument. And he can just say, it all follows. This is not controversial. Yes, unsurprisingly, it is in keeping. If you accept Theravada teaching is quite in keeping with the Pali Tipitaka. Well, it is to an extent. To an extent, it follows mundanely from the previous statement, but this also, beneath this iceberg, is this dubious set of assumptions and coercive eisegetical assertions. What is Rahula actually affirming when he says liberated through wisdom are equal with regard to the Vimukti, and Buddha Sangha and Mahayana agree? Liberated through equal regard to their Vimukti. Well, this is just affirming Theravada teaching that the worthy ones, or the notable ones, Arya Pugdala, the notable person, is variously liberated. However, because remember, the Buddha discovers it for himself. The Arhats, the notable persons, listen to the way of the elders and they get liberated that way. However, again, this is getting at a further repetition that in Proto-Theravada, perhaps Stravaka, emerging Mahayana, they're both aiming at Nibbana, and they're not, and liberated equally. And that's his inclusivist claim, but it's taking the same identity statements and reworking their essential meaning. That this is some sort of tactic as to be the great leveler, the supramundane with its parts. This is a confusion of categories. We must be critical. So what does Rahula mean by the statement that the Tathagata is different and distinguished from the liberated bhikkhus? And is he right? Tathagata is different and distinguished from the liberated bhikkhus. We've had bhikkhus mentioned here. We had the Tathagata mentioned a couple of times. What does this all mean? Well, yes, he's right that the Buddha is different to liberated bhikkhus. Certainly in Theravada thought, as we've seen, that the Buddha discovers it for himself, then by his teaching, perhaps in the Pali Canon story of the first 5 disciples, the ascetics who followed him, and they were liberated by the act of listening. They didn't discover it for themselves. That shows the Tathagata, the gone one, is different to the liberated bhikkhus, the students of the Buddha. But Mahayana Sangha would dispute a lot of this. That there are heavenly bodhisattvas. If we replace the word Buddha for bodhisattva, the bodhisattva says the bodhisattva is different. No, the bodhisattvas are much more significant to Mahayana than the historical Buddha, who's called Buddha Shakyamuni. Take Pure Land Buddhism, Amitabha, way more important. So what again does Rahula mean when he asserts that the Tathagata discovers and shows the path that was not known before? He, the Tathagata, shows the path, the Magga, that was not known before. Well, again, this is uncontroversial. This is the Theravada belief that contrasts with the way of Mahayana thinking that they're... So in Theravada, the Buddha discovered the path as a natural law, like gravity, and he taught, and others were perceived. Now, the Mahayana came to assert that he had more teaching, but that he didn't tell it to the first students. He kept it for later religious revelations that they have discovered. And what is this? Well, we don't discover Nibbana. The path is the discovery, perhaps, of compassionate mind, or the true, as the Tathagata Garbha Sutra talks about, the embryo Buddha within us. That's one of the 8 similes of it. In Theravada, whereas the way to Nibbana is what's discovered by the Buddha, not some hidden teaching on Buddha nature, or even to go further with Yogacara, luminous, non-dualistic mind, or just more general compassionate self as the goal as Mahayana argue. So this was section 14.